We're live? Okay. Well, just give me 2 minutes to get set up here, and we can rock and roll. Please do not be afraid. It's all going to work. It's all going to work. Don't worry about it.
It's 579.
When Ban comes later.
I have the space here if you want.
There's some space here? Good. Need some more space. Alright, this is all going to come later. Okay, we're almost there. Yeah, almost there. I need this one sooner. This will come at the end. Okay, everybody. We're good to go? We're good? So today we're going to talk about Half-Shekel Secrets. And we're going to start off with Parshas Kisisa. Really, this continues the instructions for the Mishkan. Right? Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe Leimer, God speaks to Moshe saying, and he tells him that in addition to the silver that was collected at will, where everybody could donate as much as they wanted, voluntarily, this would be used towards the building of the Mishkan, its furnishing, and the priestly vestments, gold, silver, copper, and a whole bunch of other different kinds of things that we learned about in the previous Torah portions. So in addition to this, there's going to be a sum of money that will be donated by everybody equally. And this is actually going to happen twice. It's going to happen once, right after Yom Kippur, because there was a plague after the golden calf, and many people died. And the metaphor that's used is some of the sheep died. Now the shepherd has to count to make sure we know what's left. And so this will be a way in which there's going to be a counting that takes place. And then there's going to be another collection in order for the purpose of a census count. And that's going to take place after the Mishkan is established for the korbanot, for the offerings that are going to be brought in the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, so we have two census taking, and the two census takings will be performed by virtue of everybody giving a half shekel. And that's really the background to how this week's Torah portion opens. Kisisa, Esreish B'nai Yisrael, when you literally take a census or raise the heads of the Israelites, Lefikudehem, according to the numbers, V'nosenu ish kofer nafshe. These are some very important words. I want you to file them away, and we'll come back to them. Each person will give the atonement of his soul, the ransom of his soul. La Hashem, to God, b'fkoidoisam, as he counts them. V'leyihia b'hem negef, so this way there will be no plague. B'fkoidoisam, when God counts them, so this has something to do with when everybody is counted and we draw attention to the numerous population of the Jewish people, and this could arouse God's attribute of judgment by deliberately calling attention to something, and when the measure of judgment is aroused, so that's not a good thing. We call this casting the evil eye. That's what it's called. Casting evil eyes brings undue attention, just like people sometimes don't want undue attention. You know, they're successful, they don't want people to know about it, they want to live under the radar. There's this business of us and God, where sometimes we get a free pass, Hashem is nice to us. We don't need to call attention to our success all the time. So therefore, the numbers shouldn't be a head count. Rather, everybody will provide a half a shekel, and this half shekels will be counted, and that's how we'll know what the census is. That's how Parshas Kisisa opens. And here's where our class is going to begin in earnest. So, the Torah now says, Ze yitnu. This is what should be given. So we don't really know what's going to be given yet. Right now we're going to hear Ze yitnu. This is what should be given. Kol ha'over al ha'pikudim, all of those who will pass through the counting. And we'll soon see in Rashi why it's called passing through the counting. Here's what has to be given. Machatzis hashekel b'shekel hakodesh. A half a shekel in the holy shekel. What's a holy shekel? Well, we'll soon see. Esrim Gera HaShekel. A shekel is comprised of a smaller denomination known as a Gera, and it's actually 20 Gera in every shekel. So you have to give a Machatzis HaShekel. You have to give a half of that, which is going to be 10 Gera, obviously. Teruma La Hashem, this will be given as a donation to God. So the first thing that catches our attention is the words Ze Yitnu. This is what shall be given. And the issue here is the word Ze. Because the word Ze, as a rule, doesn't just show up indiscriminately. So for example, just so you understand, when we have the concept of Ze, we have a Gemara. I'll start off with the Gemara in Menachos. The Gemara in Menachos says that when there were things that were difficult for Moshe Rabbeinu, so then he had to be shown. Sometimes he could be an audio learner, he could hear, but sometimes he needed visual aid, he needed to see. And these are things like, for example, the menorah. Moshe couldn't figure out exactly how you make all those branches with those ornaments, and how does it look? We know, because once you see the picture, but Moshe just couldn't grasp it. So God had to show him a picture. Another example is when God was teaching Moshe Rabbeinu how to sanctify the new moon, how to sanctify time. He had to actually show Moshe what the sliver of the moon would look like, and that's what I mean. That's called the beginning, the reappearance of the moon. And finally, when it comes to shrotzim, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't handle in cockroaches. He didn't know what are these exactly. What are these rodents? Well, there's 8 rodents that bring about ritual impurity. Incidentally, we don't even know with certainty today what those 8 rodents are, because the laws of Tumah V'Tara, the laws of ritual purity, are not part of our everyday life, and the actual tradition has kind of been lost. We think we know what they are. We don't know with certainty. So God had to show Moshe Rabbeinu. Here's a slug, here's a possum, and so on and so forth. And this way Moshe Rabbeinu became aware of it. Well, how do we know this? Because it says, the Gemara says, the Gemara Menachos on page HalfShekel, on page 29, says, this is what the menorah should look like. Now, when you just say to somebody, this, what would that mean? Specific. You're showing them a picture. This is what I want. So, otherwise it's just vague. Here's what I'm looking for. Here's what I want. And you could talk and talk. I could say, this is what I'm looking for. You have a picture, people want a dress, they print something out from the internet, they go to the seamstress, this is the dress I'm looking for. Oh, no problem, now I understand what you want. Person takes a picture of his neighbor's deck, this is the deck I want you to build. And you show the carpenter, says, oh, this, okay, no problem. Here's your fee, this is what I'll do it for. So, zeh means I'm showing somebody something. And the Gemara Menachos says that when it comes to the menorah, it says, v'zeh ma'aseh ha-menorah. It doesn't say, v'zeh, this is what the kruvim are going to look like. It says, make kruvim, make an aron, make planks, make tapestries. It doesn't say zeh, but by the menorah it says zeh. And where do we see that by the other examples? By Rosh Chodesh, it says, ha-chodesh hazeh, this new moon. That new moon. Okay, so now I know God had to have shown Moshe Rabbeinu something. Incidentally, there's a big discussion, argument to Rambam and Rashi. How did he see the moon? What's the problem? You can go outside and see the moon. Of course you could. Now it's night. The problem is, in order to perform the mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh, to sanctify the new moon, the court has to do it during the day. So if it's during the day, how did Moshe see the moon? And there's a dispute between Rashi and Rambam. Sometimes, towards the end of the day, you can actually see the moon. It happened a few weeks ago. We came out, it was broad daylight, you could see the moon. So it was a day like that. Or maybe it was a prophetic vision. God took him to his own special planetarium and said, okay, here's what the moon would look like. It's not the actual moon, but here's what it would look like. Point being, there's a discussion how Moshe Rabbeinu saw the moon and then sanctified the new moon. Was it prophecy or was it seen in a normative fashion? But the point is, everybody knows he saw the moon because it says, HaChodesh hazeh lochem. And how about the rodents? Well, when it comes to the rodents, it says, V'zeh lochem hatamei. This will be for you the tamei. Okay, so we have 3 examples in the Torah. It says the word zeh, and we know it means God's pointing a finger. This is what it looks like. And then Rashi, the Gemara says, V'yesh omrim, there is an opinion, af hilchos shchita. The laws of how you slaughter an animal ritually, rendering it kosher, also had to be shown to Moshe Rabbeinu. And of course, Moshe then was the first shochet, and he taught the subsequent shochtim, until today, that's how it is. In order to be a shochet, you cannot simply learn the halachas, you have to do that too. You have to be taught by somebody who was taught by somebody who was taught by somebody, going all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu, who was taught by God. And how do we know that? Because it says, V'zeh asher tasa ala mizbeach. This is what you do upon the altar, meaning for the purpose of the altar. In the desert, the Jewish people didn't actually perform the mitzvah of Schita for regular kosher meat. It was only for offerings. And for the first 40 years, they were permitted to eat meat that was killed in any fashion. So the only time Schita, ritual slaughter, was used was actually in the Mishkan for a korban. And when it says about the korban, it says, V'zeh asher tasa. So now that I shared this Gemara with you on Daf Chav Tes, you should be asking yourself, so if it says Zeh, it means God showed something, and he showed the menorah, and he showed him the new moon, and he showed him the shiratzim, and one opinion, he showed him also Schita, because it says Zeh, and we just read in the Torah, it says Zeh Yitnu. What exactly did he show him?
Maybe the weight.
Weight you don't see. Weight you...
20
weight you...
He articulates.
Yeah, he articulates. It's very simple. And you ask anybody who knows what currency is. Weights you weigh. Put them on a scale, you weigh. You don't weigh with your eyes. You weigh with a scale. You weigh with a mechanism. So Tastefest asks this question. Tastefest says, Yesh l'tmaya. This is really strange to me, says the Tastefest. The lechosh of machtzas HalfShekel. Why doesn't the Gemara not include Parshas Kisisa? What's going on? How come Parshas Kisisa got left out here? Doesn't it say Zeh Yitnu? So the Tastefest answers, V'lo shayach hasam niskasha. The thing is that if you remember when Rashi commented on the menorah, for example, a few weeks ago in the Parsha, in Parshas Truma, it says niskashe Moshe, nitkashe. Word kashe means hard. So when I try to explain something to you and say that's kashe, that's very hard. So nit kashe means Moshe was confounded by it. He had a hard time with this. Rashi doesn't say anything about nit kashe. God said $50? Wow. Moshe said $50. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Well, $50. But like, you mean $50? Yeah, I mean $50. Moshe doesn't have a problem. Now, we can take a look into Rashi, but I'm giving you this background so you understand where Rashi is coming from. Rashi says, loy kimin matbea shalesh. God did show him a fiery coin. God did show him a fiery coin. Now, why God has to show him a fiery coin is an excellent question. We'll try to deal with that today. But God did because it says Zeh. But the Tastefest says, well, if he showed him a fiery coin, then why isn't it included here in the Gemara Menachos? When the Gemara records all the things that says Zeh, it means here it is. So the answer of Tastefest is, it doesn't say the word niskasha. There's no difficulty. And interestingly, Rashi doesn't say niskasha. Rashi doesn't say Moshe had a hard time understanding this, so God showed him a fiery coin. It just says matter of factly, he showed him a fiery coin. It doesn't say the word he had a hard time. Rashi doesn't say that. And Tastefest says there was no niskasha. He wouldn't understand it if God didn't show him. It wasn't like, it's like if I try to explain something to you and just say, okay, I know what you're talking about, but I can't really get the details. The precise details are eluding me. Could you illustrate? Can you show this to me so I understand the details? That's called nitkasheh. I have a general awareness of what you're talking about, but I don't know what the details. I can't understand the details. It's here Moshe's like, I don't know what we're talking about at all. So God showed him. It wasn't a niskasheh, Schita of Tastefest. It was just, he didn't know, so God showed him. There's no niskasheh.
Were there coins?
Were there coins? What do you think? Avraham Avinu purchased a piece of property with coins.
Coins?
Coins? Of course there were coins.
Silver. It says silver.
Silver.
Pieces of silver.
Pieces of silver.
Coins?
We think there were coins. And you know better than me. Are there no coins that are older than 33 centuries?
I can't think of anything.
Interesting. Okay, good. So we'll see. So Moshe Rabbeinu actually mints coins. That's going to be part of what we talk about today. He does mint coins.
Right.
It does seem that there were coins because by Avraham Avinu, it doesn't just say pieces of silver. It says he gave him good coins which were negotiable. Oiver lasoicher. Doesn't just say pieces of silver. It says he gave good currency. He paid top dollar, which means he gave negotiable currency. which indicates that there was some currencies that were more valued or more easily negotiable than others.
Silver.
So, again, but the silver and silver, would it be the difference in alloy of the silver, or that there was, greenbacks are accepted here? Not everybody accepts our money. You might end up in that situation overseas. So you have American dollars. Not everybody wants Canadian dollars. So there's this business of negotiable coins where the people feel more confidence. Maybe it's a more powerful king, more powerful government. They stand behind their currency. This is a shaky country, a banana republic. Some guy minted some coins, but we don't know if we can rely on those coins, and we don't know if he's the real deal or playing games. Maybe it's not really silver. He doesn't have a reputation. Seems that there were coins. So that's what Tastefest says. Tastefest says there's no issue here, there's no niskasha. It's just that Moshe Rabbeinu, he didn't really know what's going on here, so God showed him a coin. Now, we have a similar Gemara in Maseches Chulin. The Gemara kind of conveys to us a similar teaching. And the Gemara says, and what about, the Tastefest here says the same thing, what about the Medrash that says he showed him kimin madea shalesh, that he showed him a fiery coin? What does this mean? So the Tastefest says, lo niskasha, there was no hardship in understanding anything. But Tastefest says here in Masechet Chulin on page 42, here Tastefest says, Shatama al hadavar. Moshe Rabbeinu was astounded at the idea being conveyed to him by God. Namely, Ma yochel adam litin koifer nafshe. How is a person going to give the atonement of his soul? How's he going to ransom his soul with a piece of silver? How's that going to work?
Concept.
So God is conveying a concept here by showing him this fiery coin. Now, I know this needs to be understood, but this is our opening volley. Okay, we're going to put these Gemaras aside now, and I'm going to tell you that it's interesting, the Schita of Tastefest, just so you know. The Tastefest is a compendium of the Ashkenazic Talmudic sages of the Middle Ages. That's what it is. It's a compendium. There were dozens and dozens of Bali HaTosfos. Some are quoted on a regular basis. Some are quoted as rarely as even once in the entire Talmud. Some are quoted half a dozen times. Some are quoted hundreds and hundreds of times. Most of them were part of Rashi's family in some way, shape, or form, or his students. Rashi had several daughters. They married his most outstanding students. They produced a profusion of the greatest scholars and sages of the Jewish people. At a certain point, the Alsace-Lorraine Jewish community, which was mostly in France and southern Germany, they decided to kind of bring all of the different ideas of the Tosafos together, and they created a seamless commentary, an anthology of hundreds of years of Torah scholarship, and that became known as Schita of Tastefest. In the Sephardic world, nobody did this till much later. There's something called Shita Mekubetzes, which was done much later, and it's not as authoritative, and it's not printed in the Talmud. So therefore you have Ramban, his commentary on Talmud, Ritva, Rashba. These are all great Sephardic sages, and much of what they say is repetitive in their own syntax, but nobody kind of brought it all together in an authoritative way. So the interesting thing is that the Tosafos are better known for their commentary on the Talmud, and it's printed in the Talmud, of course, but the Tosafos also taught a lot of Chumash. This is not as well known. Some of the commentary has been around ever since Tosfos has been around. That's called Das Zikenim the Bali HaTosfos. Some of the commentary was only compiled and printed about 40 years ago from manuscript. And they called it, since the first one was called Das Zikenim, they called this Moshe Zikenim. It's just a collection. But it's all what we call Schita of Tastefest. This is the way the Tastefest learned. One of the great Bali HaTosfos, or the late Bali HaTosfos, is known as the Maharik Rabbi Yosef Kolon, who later moves from Alsace-Lorraine and settles, I think, in Mantoba in Italy. But the interesting thing is that in their commentary on the Chumash, on Rashi, the Bali HaTosfos basically say the same thing. So the Maharik, he says, why is Rashi commenting? Why is Rashi bringing a medrash about a fiery coin? I mean, okay, the medrash says a lot of things. What does it have to do with the pshat? If I'm just learning the Chumash and I say, Zeh Yitnu, this is what should be given, I can bet at least half a shekel that if we were just learning this Chumash and I would say, okay, Zeh Yitnu, this is what you should give, Kol ha'over al kudim, everybody who's going to be counted should give machzis hashekel. I don't think anybody around this table would say, hey, it says Zeh. You probably wouldn't notice that. 80% of people wouldn't notice it. But there would be some people who say, 1 second, but isn't Zeh? Doesn't Zeh mean this? Isn't there kind of a showing thing? So Rashi doesn't can't gloss things over. If 5% or 1% or 20% of people are going to say, hey, something's not right here, if there's a problem in Pshuta Shel Mikra, Rashi is going to comment. Oftentimes, we don't even know what motivated Rashi's comment. We have to try to break our heads to say, what was Rashi worried about? Why did he bother introducing this midrashic teaching or this idea of our sages? What was missing in Pshuta Shel Mikra? What demanded elucidation? Remember, there are hundreds of midrashim. There could be up to 70 interpretations in every word of the Torah. And then some. So the Maharik says, I'll tell you why. The issue here is because it says the zeh. The zeh. So it sounds like he showed him something, which is the Schita of the Tastefest on Shas. The Tastefest on Shas draws a direct link between the vizeh of the menorah, of Rosh Chodesh, of the shiratzim, the rodents, to the vizeh yitnu. The zeh yitnu is an issue. And the same thing is in the Moshe of Zekanim, it's brought down. So the Moshe of Zekanim actually asks the question, what was Moshe's issue? Why did he need a visual? What was so hard to understand about half a buck? Does he not know anything about currency? That he had to get a fiery hologram teaching? He had to have it beamed up on the wall? Like, what was the issue? He didn't know that a shekel is comprised of 20 gera? It's like everybody knows a dollar has 20 nickels in it, which is, by the way, soon going to be the smallest denomination. There aren't going to be pennies anymore. They're not making pennies anymore. So we're exactly where they were in the methodology of currency 4,000 years ago. They had 20 gera. You're going to have not 100 pennies in a dollar. You're going to have 20 nickels. That's all that's going to be available soon. Nickels. 20 nickels. It's exactly what they had then. The smallest denomination that they had was a gera. Now, by the way, there are small denominations. But like in today's day and age where the pennies are being phased out, the small denominations weren't spoken of. They didn't even appear in currency. So the 20 gera, you could break it down to barley coins of silver, but that was already dealing in barley coins of silver. You're dealing literally with bullion. You were not dealing with actual coinage. Coinage began from a nickel and up. 20. So Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know there's 20 nickels in a dollar? Really? So he wouldn't know that there's 10 nickels in a half a dollar? Like, what was the issue over here? So the Moshe of Zekanim says, you know what bothered Moshe? Moshe said, how could it be that a person would be able to achieve kofer nafshe, ransom for his soul, for half a buck? That's got to be the best deal ever. That's unbelievable. You can ransom your soul for 50 cents. Everybody. Rich, poor, doesn't make a difference. Moshe said, I'm sorry, God, I don't get this. What's going on here? How could that be? So God showed him a fiery coin. And of course, you should be thinking now, oh, that's nice. So what's the answer? So I know why God showed him a fiery coin. I know what Moshe Rabbeinu's question was. I understand his frustration. Actually, doesn't make sense to me either. But how does the fiery coin answer anything? What did that do for anybody? So basically, great, we have an answer of Tastefest, the Schita of Tastefest. It's very clear that Tastefest makes this issue of the vizeh. There had to have been some kind of show and tell, some kind of display. Why is that answering the question that Moshe Rabbeinu asks? Now, it is interesting to note, Rashi does not say the word niskashe. He doesn't say Moshe Rabbeinu had a hard time. He says that by the menorah. Moshe Rabbeinu had a hard time envisioning what was the menorah going to look like. He couldn't envision it. So God shows him. But when it comes to the coins, there was no issue. He didn't have a hard time what it looked like. No niskashe, okay, that's a great diuk. No nitkashe, fine. So how do we answer the question? So the Rebbe, in one of his very early sichos, he asked this very question. And the Rebbe says that really and truly, one cannot ask a question as to why is it half a buck or not half a buck. That's not the issue over here. The real question boils down to, since the Gemara tells us in the Talmud Yerushalmi that the atonement here was not an atonement for a sin, for a detail. We were seeking ransom for our souls or atonement for the sin of the golden calf. The sin of the golden calf. In other words, does it make that much more sense that you kill a goat and then you get atoned for? That makes sense. God came to Moshe. Moshe, we're going to kill a goat and we get atoned for. Oh, that makes sense. Let's kill the goat. Moshe didn't have an issue with that. But when it came to $50, he had an issue. Why? Why is killing a goat any more reasonable or logical than a $50? It isn't. Let's be frank. It isn't. It makes absolutely no sense to us how killing a goat helps a nation. In fact, that sounds crazy. That's the truth. Let's be honest. Like kill a goat and everybody's free now. You didn't do anything. You did a big sin. You rebelled against God. No problem. Just kill the goat. Why would that work? And the Torah actually talks about this previously. You cannot say, well, it's the first time we're hearing about ransom of a soul. It's the first time we're hearing about something that can atone for us. It's not true. In last week's Torah portion, we heard about offerings. Or offerings that were brought for a specific issue, and offerings that were to be brought in perpetuity. And there's an element of forgiveness and ransom and cleansing that's associated with those offerings. And doesn't say, Moshe said, people sin and a goat dies and they're atoned for? I don't get that. So God showed him a fiery goat. And Moshe said, oh, a fiery goat. Now I understand. That never happened. It only happened when it came to the half-shekel. So the Rebbe says it must be because there's a much bigger issue at hand here. A person can do an aveira. And a person does an aveira, it means there is a part of me which is broken. Mitzvahs, as a rule, are seen as limbs of God. What does it mean, a limb of God? God doesn't have any corporeality. That's ridiculous. Any kind of corporeal terminology is purely anthropomorphical, as Rambam says in Hilchos Torah. We're not allowed to ascribe any kind of corporeality, chas v'shalom, heaven forbid, to God. So what does it mean when you say Einei Hashem, God's eyes, God's nostrils, Yidei Hashem, Yad Hashem, the hand of God? What does that mean? And the answer is, it's anthropomorphism. It's not literal. It's a metaphor. It's a figure of speech. Okay, so a mitzvah is called the limbs of God. Why is it called the limbs of God? Because a person has a neshama. And if a person, God forbid, loses a limb, there isn't less neshama. But the reality is that a perfect specimen is a soul enclosed in a body that's got 10 toes, 10 fingers, 1 nose, 2 eyes, 2 ears that work, and so on and so forth. And then the soul is fully animated, activated, engaged, and fully functional. So the mitzvahs are the way we are able to have this functional relationship with God. And we actually need all the mitzvahs. So what about mitzvahs we can't do? What about mitzvahs that we're prevented from because there's no Beit HaMikdash? Good question. Number one, that's partly the spiritual meaning of galut, of exile, meaning we're distanced from God. We're not having the fully functional relationship. We're like in the Special Olympics, kind of. We're not able to see things the way people used to see things and hear things that people used to hear and function the way they used to function. But another part of that is, when we learn about a mitzvah, that's how we access that mitzvah. There's this idea that when you learn about all the mitzvahs, then you engage all the mitzvahs. The mitzvahs that should be acted on, you should act upon, and the other mitzvahs, you learn about them. And when you learn about them, you're able to forge and nurture the relationship with God through that specific mitzvah. So, when something is broken, a detail is broken, a detail can fix it. Okay, you could ask the question about anything. How is it that putting on tefillin fortifies my faith or helps subjugate me to God? How is it possible that eating matzah gives me a new sense of emunah, of trust and faith in God? How is it possible that when a person davens or prays that he gets his requests responded to from God? You could ask the question about anything anybody does. But the reality is that mitzvahs serve specific functions. You should be kind to somebody, and we say Hashem will be kind to you. But then we have something like golden calf. It's not like a little sin. It's not like we damaged a limb. It's like we just basically truncated everything. It's like I have a relationship with God, and I made a mistake. I didn't do something right. It isn't something right. I basically said, bye God! See you later. I just found a gold calf. He looks like a lot more fun. So I'm not going to be worshiping you anymore, God. I'm turning my back on you altogether. And Moshe Rabbeinu now is told, yes, they turned their back on me. They may believe God doesn't exist, but doesn't matter. Doesn't matter because they're going to give $50. And the $50, that's going to make everything right. As long as everybody gives it, we're going to have full atonement, full ransom achieved. That's what's bothering Moshe here. What's bothering Moshe is, so what's the response? What's God telling Moshe? He's telling him a fiery coin. So the Rebbe said, perhaps we could understand this as per a metaphor that it's repeated in the name of the Baal Shem Tov. The Rebbe didn't say if it's certainly from the Baal Shem Tov, but they say it's from the Baal Shem Tov. And the story is about a fellow who learned to be a goldsmith or a silversmith. And he was an apprentice, and he did all the things, he went through all the lessons, and he learned how to handle different metals and a different consistency and malleability. He went through everything. And then he set up shop himself, and he had everything in place, and he, for some reason, couldn't do anything. And somebody finally figured out what was wrong. He didn't have any fire. He forgot to light the fire. So he went through the motions without the fire. And so the coin of fire represents the idea of the fervor, the passion. A person could do all kinds of things, but if it's devoid of any fervor, if it has no neshama fire, then it's all going to be worthless. Whether he gives $5, $500, $500,000, if it's done in a coarse, crass, and arrogant way, it means nothing. But if a person comes to Hashem with a sense of fervor and a sense of passion, and the neshama is seeking to connect to Hashem, and you follow through the motions that God told you, that's the meaning of the fiery coin. So in other words, Moshe Rabbeinu said, $5 is going to get atonement, and Hashem says to Moshe, there's a fire side of the coin. There's not just the silver side, the technical side. There's a neshama business here. The coin is one part of the picture. That's what you have to actually go through. But Moshe Rabbeinu was given a visualization of the fiery element, the neshama, the spiritual element. And that's the meaning of the fiery coin. Okay, which is very, very nice. But ultimately, the question comes back. So why a half a shekel of a fiery coin? I get you have to have fire. Why was there emphasis on a half a shekel? If you're looking for the smallest denomination, it should have been a gera. If you're looking for currency, it should have been a shekel. And yet the emphasis here was specifically on the half a shekel. And as we move forward in our study of the pasuk, it says Zeh Yitnu. This is what you have to give. So the first thing we know, Zeh Yitnu, we have this fiery business. Hedoloi, Hashem showed him Kemin Matbei Shalesh, a fiery coin. Umishkala, and its weight, Machatzis HaShekel. It had to be a half a shekel, God said. I'm going to show you the fire of a soul, but the fire of the fire has to be a half a shekel. What does that mean? If it's not about the amount, it's about the fire and the fervor, so then what is this business of, he showed him a matbei shalesh, and mishkala, and its weight is machatzis hashekel. Its weight is a half a shekel. What does that mean? What does that mean, the weight of the fire is half a shekel? That makes absolutely no sense, actually. But the truth is that of all physicality, silver represents the most dense, the most physical of things. It's taken from the depths of the ground. It comes out like filth. It has to go through a crucible and a very, very intense process in which all the toxins are burned off, and then what's left is finally pure silver. It's like as earthy as you can get. And fire is the polar opposite. Energy is the part of the physical world which is not really contained. It doesn't have a specific shape. It's weightless. It's the polar opposite. In other words, within the frame of reality, the Rebbe says, if you look at it, silver, kesef, and eish, fire, represent polar opposites. And God is showing Moshe Rabbeinu the fire of a half a shekel. I mean, like the weight of the half shekel in fire. Half shekel in weight and fire are oxymorons. They don't go together. You can't have a half shekel weight of a fire. You can have an image of a fire, but then again, real fire or real energy doesn't stay still. It's a constant state of flux. And here that Rashi emphasizes, he showed him Kimimad Be'eshleif, but then he goes further and he says, Umishkala, and the weight of it was Machatzis HaShekel, a half a shekel, and he says, this is what I was talking about. Because Zeh Yitnu. So it's obviously not just about fire and fervor, it's about a certain kind of fire and fervor. It's about a weight of a half a shekel fire and fervor, which needs to be elucidated and better explained. If we go forward in the pasuk, it says Kol ha'over al apikudim. Rashi says over al apikudim. This means the Torah uses over. You know, I was learning this Rashi with my son Levi, and he said, Tati, he said, over is an avera. It's an avera. Avera is a sin. I said, it's a great question, Levi. It's a great point. Why is avera a sin? A chet is a sin. Why is not avera a sin? I said, I don't know. So what does it mean to be over? What does it mean to be over? I said, you know, sometimes you get a coloring book? He says, yeah. I said, how are you supposed to color? He says, in the lines. I said, what if you color out of the lines? He's very good at that. He colors in the lines. He says, well, you don't color out of the lines. You color in the lines. I said, exactly. What if you go over the line? Well, then you didn't do your thing right. You have to color in the line. I said, this is exactly the point. Hashem gives us halacha, and halacha is the lines. Here's the lines you should live within. What if you color outside the lines? You cross the line. That's what Avera means. Avera means crossing the line. If you cross the police line, you may get in trouble with the police. You cross the picket line, you get in trouble with the union. There's a line. Don't cross the line. That's the meaning of Avera. So then what does this mean? Ha'over al pikudim? Rashi says, derech hamonim, the way of those being counted is ma'avirim is hanimnin zeh achar zeh. When you're counting people, you pass them along. You create like a stationary line, so you're now going to do the head count. And you keep them on a conveyor belt, keep them moving. And they go past this line. And where do we see that? We see that with regard to a mitzvah where we have to count little sheep to know which is the 10th sheep so we can bring it as a korban. It's called Meiser Behema. How are you going to decide which sheep to bring? So the halacha is you put all the sheep together, all 10 of them, or for that matter 100 of them who were born this year. You create a little passageway. You leave the mother sheep outside so they want to get out to the mother sheep, and they start to jump out, and you count. And that's your line. And you count 1, 2, 3, and number 10 gets dabbed with a little bit of red paint. So when you come back later, you find the sheep or the goats with the red paint, and there's your Meiser Behema. What is it called? It's called Kol Asher Yaver Tachas HaShavet. Whoever passes under the staff or the line. This is the line. So over la pikuda means pass the line. V'chein, similarly, Rashi here invokes a verse from the prophet Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah 33, where this is a nevuah, a prophecy about the comfort of the Jewish people in the Holy Land of Israel. And it says, Ta'avorna hatzorin al yedei moine. The sheep will again be counted, which is like saying there will be prolific flocks being produced here again. Because things weren't so good. And everybody got destroyed. And there were no fresh flocks. And, the land of Israel was bereft. And it said, there'll be flocks back here again. The land will come back to life. So this is the business of over al pikudim. And then it says, this is what they should give in order to be part of the census. Machatz is HaShekel, a half a shekel in the shekel HaKodesh. Rashi says, what is the meaning of machatz HaShekel in the shekel HaKodesh? Mishkal HaShekel shekotzafti l'cho lishkal. The weight of the shekel, which I established for you, to weigh shikle HaKodesh, the holy currency, which means like there was a holy standard. There's a currency, a standard currency used for matters of holiness. Like, for example, shkolim ha'amurim beparshas arochin v'stei achuzah. There's mitzvahs that we read about in the book of Leviticus about certain properties or real estate that's given to the Beis HaMikdash. It's given over, so it has to be given in a certain way and it has to be exchanged in a certain way. And what's the currency? What's the standard? We live in Canada. Whenever there's something online, you say, what currency are you paying? Dollars. Which dollars? Canadian dollars or US dollars? What's the difference? Oh, there's a big difference, unfortunately, these days for us. The point is, which currency are you using? So there was a what's called the holy currency. Holy currency doesn't mean we worship money, God forbid. Holy currency meant this was the currency that was used for matters of mitzvahs. So when a mitzvah required a specific amount of currency or a specific payment, this was the standard used. The standard of Moses, the standard of the holy shekel, meaning the holy currency. That's the holy standard, which was a certain amount of silver, incidentally. So esrim geira HaShekel. First you say it's a half a shekel. Half a shekel of the shekel HaKodesh. Oh, but I don't know what shekel it is. Oh, I'll tell you what shekel is. You want to know what a shekel is? A shekel is 20 geira. So you have to give of this 20 geira, you have to give, that's how much a esrim geira HaShekel. Machatz HaShekel truma Hashem. Like this verse is like literally scratching your left ear with your right hand. You're repeating the same thing over 3 times. What should they give? They should give a half a shekel. Of which shekel? Of the holy currency. How much is the holy currency? It's 20 geira. So therefore they should give a machatz HaShekel. There's got to be an easier way to say this. What is the Torah driving at? What is the Torah emphasizing when it says, like Rashi says, Achshav pirush l'chakam, and now it tells you, so what is the holy currency? And the answer is 20 geira. What's a geira? Geira, Rashi says, is l'shoin ma'ah. It's used in the Gemara, it's called a ma'ah. That's the terminology used for a gera.
Aramaic.
So it's Aramaic, the language of the Gemara. Right? We call it a nickel, right? That was, we call it a nickel because they made it out of nickel. But in those days, that's what it was called, a mo. It was made of silver and it was called a mo. And it says, V'chein yavoi lehishtach v'esloi la'agoras kesef v'kikar lechem. This is a very harsh prophecy that's found in the book of Shmuel, right in the beginning, the end of the second chapter, in which the house of Eli, who misbehaved and mistreated the sacred responsibility and duty they were given in maintaining the Mishkan in Shiloh, they were given a very harsh prophecy, a very, very gloomy outlook of their future. Their seed would be wiped out. There would be hardly remnants of the family left. A new high priest would be appointed, which did happen later, if Yasser disappears and Tzadok becomes the Kohen. And it says that the remnants would come for a piece of silver and a little bit of bread. They would, like it says, they would prostrate themselves. It doesn't literally prostrate. We don't bow to people, but figuratively, they would, be on their knees, so to speak, for a little piece of silver. So what is a gera? So a gera, it says agoras kesef. Rashi is drawing a line between the word agoras kesef and gera. By the way, in modern Hebrew, a penny is an agura. Where does that come from? Ben Yehuda took it out of this pasuk. But it was actually silver, not a penny. But it was the smallest denomination of the shekel, which they made denominations. They fashioned it after the English pound and the American dollar. And so they made 100 of the smallest denomination, not 20 of the small denomination. And agurot, by the way, are getting phased out, just like pennies are getting phased out. And so in the end, the agura doesn't exist. But the agura was the smallest denomination that he could find. So he said, oh, agura, great, fine. We'll make that the penny. That'll be the Jewish penny, the Israeli penny. So what does the word come from? So it seems that Rashi follows the idea of gera, the term gera here. However, very interestingly, if you take a look at in the actual Navi, in the book of Shmuel, so look in the Mefarshim, it seems to indicate that this is related to the concept of agra, which means a wage. Like a smallest denomination of a wage. You're all familiar with the Mishnah, Lefum Tsara, according to the pain, agra. We freely translate that in English. We use poetic license to say, according to the pain is the gain. So tsar maybe could be closer to pain. Agra is not really gain. It's really wages. It's really what it means. It translates usually as the reward, the payback, or wages. So in agura, there's a discussion amongst the Mefarshim here if aguras kesef is with an aleph or not. Because it says agura. Is the agura part of the word, or the word is really gera? Rashi seems to indicate it's gera, like the biblical expression in Parshas Kisisa. Others, like the Radak, seem to say no, this is not necessarily that. This is the aleph. No, sorry, Radak agrees, but other Mefarshim say, you know what? Maybe the word agura comes from the word agra. And that's the meaning of here in the book of Shmuel. That's what it means when it says, so again, we see small denomination of money going forward now several hundred years to the time of Eli Cohen, time of Shmuel, and the smallest denomination is still a gera, agura. Okay, nice cross-reference. So we know what the weight is, the smallest amount, and Rashi goes into the denominations and talks about how the denominations changed during the Second Temple. They added a little bit of silver, they tweaked the currency, and he says the halacha is that the half shekel goes up when you tweak the currency, but it can't get less than Moses. You can increase it, but you can't decrease it. So what's the question we have here now? The real question that rises at this point is, okay, I understand that there's fervor and passion, and it's not just action. I understand that the Torah had to give us an amount. I get that. It had to give us an amount. Fine. You can ask about any amount. Why this amount? Eat matzah. How much matzah should I eat? The guy plays football. He weighs 400 pounds. He told me eat an ounce of matzah. His fingers are like a kazayas. He looks at the matzah. He's like, "What are you joking or something?" Like, this is a meal. This is a munchie. For him, he should have a matzah, right? And you take a little yidel over there. He's 4.5 feet tall. He's barely got a stomach. If I'm eating a kazayas, he says, "Vei is mir." How am I eating a kazayas? To him, a kazayas looks like a full moon or something, right? But everybody has to eat a kazayas. That's the halacha. Comes the night of Pesach, you have a little tiny stomach, or you're a wrestler, you're Jewish, you got to eat a kazayas of matzah. Nobody's going to come over here, God, why a kazayas? By the way, kizayit means like an olive, the size of an olive. The question is, what would the olive is like? And maybe a kabeya it should be. Why not the size of an egg, which is larger? Or why not the size of a pras, of a loaf, half a loaf? That would be much more fun. Imagine ever eat at the Seder and eat like 2 matzahs. Like, how'd you decide? And if it's just a little, so say, I don't know, a munch, a bite. So really and truly, you can't ask questions like that because we have this principle that all shiurim are halacha l'Moshe Sinai. The mitzvah amounts, and there are different mitzvah amounts, are as a rule not based on what we call rhyme and reason necessarily, but rather the very notion that everybody can be required to eat the same amount is in and of itself illogical. Because the truth is that we have different capacities. And for one person it may be very difficult. And somebody else it may be very easy for. So why wouldn't God make it like commensurate? The answer is that's the shear. The shear is the shear. Figure it out. You got no teeth?
Same thing with the cubit.
Same thing with the cubit. The cubit happens to be that the average man's cubits be from here to here, happens to be. But the bottom line is, if you're a very large person, a very small person, the cubit's a cubit. So it's a shear. So you can't really ask a question, so why was it 10 gera? Why wasn't it a did? Why? That's what God said. God gave an amount, and remember, this is an amount that everybody had to be able to give, from the poorest person to the richest person. So that's not a question. You know what is the question? The question is, why is there such an emphasis on half? That's a question. That's a very real question. And just to try to, to augment that question and to help you understand how strange it is, the concept of Moshe Rabbeinu having difficulty to the point that he had to be shown, right? There's this, he had to be shown the fire and he had to be shown the half shekel, like the Havanas HaMikra brings in the name of the Chacham called Al Mushnino. He says it was because it had to be pointed at. The Zeh HaDavar, this was the thing, exactly this. And he had to show him what that coin was going to look like. And you see that imagery, that half shekel imagery, that's the image. That's the fire. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, that's the fire. If you want to show that there's an alter ego to silver, you show a fiery coin. Why are you showing a half a coin? How and why does that make it real? How does that make it more effective? And the question gets even bigger. Because this business of a half a coin has already shown up in the Torah well over a book ago. And guess what? The half a coin a book ago has a name by itself. The 50-cent piece has its own name. We find this in the book of Genesis, chapter 24, verse 22. It's a middle of a dramatic shidduch story playing out. There's no chassan, just a kala so far. And there's a chassan's rep. And he meets this girl, and he says, "You're fantastic. You're exactly what Yitzchak needs. I'm convinced of it." He's so convinced of it that before he meets her parents, he's already giving her gifts. And it says, "Vayhi kashakilo agamalim lishtes." There is Rivka Imenu. The camels haven't yet finished drinking. Vayikach ha'ish nezem zov. He takes a nose ring, a gold nose ring. It's a Becca mishkale. It weighs a Becca. And then he gives her shnei tzmidim. He gives her 2 bracelets, al yodeh. Asara zahav mishkalim. They weigh 10 gold pieces. So what's going on here? What's with the Becca? Rashi says, Becca? You know what the Becca is? Like, do I need to know, some 37 centuries later, how much Rivka's nose ring weighed? Like, really? Half a shekel, by the way, is 0.6 of an ounce of gold. Okay. I don't know if that's heavy or not heavy. It's 0.6. It's a heavy gold ring. 0.6 of an ounce? Okay. Whoopie-doo. And what if it will be half an ounce of gold? Like, what difference does that make? And Rashi feels it's very important to tell you that the reason that the Torah says that it's a Becca, you listening? Remez, this is an allusion to Shikle Yisrael, to the shekels of the Jewish people. It doesn't say half shekels. To the shekels of the Jewish people that will be Becca la Gilgoilas. They'll be giving a Becca per head. So how much is a half shekel? A Becca. Well, if it's a Becca, why don't you just say a Becca? Why do you have to tell me stories of half a shekel? And it gets even stranger, because in Parshas Pekudei, not too far away, just next parsha and a half along, it says in chapter 38, verse 26, Becca la Gilgoilas. a gulgoila. It says a Becca for a skull. And then it says machzah shekel b'shekel HaKodesh. Yes, why does this half a coin have to have 3 names? It has to be a half a coin, it has to be 10 gera, it's a Becca, so say a Becca. He didn't give her half a shekel worth, he gave her a Becca. And the same terminology is used for the half a shekel in Parshas Pekudei. What's going on over here? The Maharal gives us a whole story because the shekels were used to purchase karbanot and the offerings in the Beis Hamikdash. They purified the souls of the Jewish people because that's what these shekels were used for. And therefore the message is that this is about cleansing of the soul, and Rivka is about to be cleansed and transformed and become a Jew and become part of Avram's family. Okay, we could go on with this holy stuff. We're not learning Parshas Chayesara now. I'm asking a simple question. Becca, it has a name. So just, if it has a name, use the name. It's not a new name. It's the name that's, we knew this before we knew what a half a shekel is. We knew what a Becca is. And here in Parshas Pekudei, it clearly says that the Becca is a half a shekel. Clearly. So now the plot is going to thicken. I'm going to give you 2 good reasons why this half a shekel shouldn't be a half a shekel. 2 good reasons. Number 1, let me share with you the words that the Rambam uses to conclude the laws of Isurei Mizbeach. Remember, these shekels were used, the first set of shekels was used for the base that the planks were put into, and the hooks for the top of the pillars that the courtyard. The second set or collection was used for the offerings, the korbanot that were brought in perpetuity every single day. So this is offerings, right? So then there's certain kind of offerings which are not permitted called Isurei Mizbeach. And the end of Isurei Mizbeach, it talks about different kinds of oil. And it says that all of the oils are appropriate to be kneaded into the flour to make the meal offering. So the Rambam asks, can I ask you a little question, he says? If all the oils are good, why did you have to identify 8 different levels of oil? Either you leave it on the top of the tree until it gets ripe and it gets beaten by the sun, and then it's very soft and you squeeze it, or you grind it, or you squeeze it twice. He said, what's the difference? It all works anyway. So he says, there's a lesson here. And I'm quoting. Rambam says, you want to be meritorious? You want to be meritorious? Everybody wants to be meritorious. So you want to be meritorious, it says, then you have to subjugate or restrain your evil inclination. What does our evil inclination tell us when it comes to things like giving? Don't give. Don't give so much. Give less. As they say, some people will stop at nothing when it comes to giving. Some people give a little. When it comes to giving, all of a sudden nobody wants to give. When you're buying something you don't need, you're never going to use, but you really want. Nobody thinks twice. All right, I really need this. No, you don't, but whatever, you want to buy it. When it comes to tzedakah, everybody's nervous. Why do they want from me? Another collector's after me. Why is that? That's your Yetzer Hara. He doesn't sleep. He never takes a vacation. So what should you do? So Rambam says what you should do is you should open your fist that will invariably clench. And you should be given a broad way. When you give, you should give min hayofa hameshubach b'yoser. You should give not the least, but the most. Not what's passing, but the best. And he says, this has been demonstrated from the very beginning of human history. There were 2 people who brought offerings. One's name was Hevel, and one's name was Cain. You know that story, right? Which offering did Hashem accept? Hevel. You know Cain, it was Cain's idea. Hevel wasn't such a nice guy. He knocked off his brother's idea, but he gave the finest and the best. And Cain gave the leftovers. So it says, Vayisha Hashem ala Hevel v'minchase. And the Rambam says, Hu hadin. Listen carefully, my friends. B'chol davar shul Hashem, whatever's for God, hakel atov, whatever's for our good Lord. Sheyiyah min hanov atov. Give it the best. And so, quote, in Bana Beis Tefillah, if you build a shul, what's the standard of a shul? What should a shul look like? A shul should be nicer than your home. So therefore the standard is, whatever the kind of homes people live in that neighborhood, the shul should be nicer. So people in their home, that's my house, I want it to look nice. It's just a shul. No. Rambam says, if the shul is Hashem's home, it should be nicer than your home. The nicest building of all should be the shul. The Sephardic Jews, by the way, excelled at this. The Ashkenazim Jews didn't do so well at this usually, because Rambam says it very clear. What about feeding the people who are hungry? You give them the leftovers? No, says Rambam. Says, you know what you do? You give them you give them the finest and the best on your table. You eat the leftovers. You eat yesterday's bread. You give the poor person, you give the guest the fresh bread. Kisa arum, person's naked, person's desperate to have something to cover himself. Don't give him yesterday's wardrobe. Say, hey, he's a schlepper anyway. That's what's the difference. He can have a little threadbare. No. You give him the finest cloth, and when you give something to the Beis HaMikdash, yakdish min hayafa, you give the finest. And where's the proof? The proof is, it says called chelev. Literally chelev is fat, but like the cream of the crop, called chelev l'Hashem. You give the finest, you give the best to God. So there's a famous question here that the Brisker Rav, Velvela Brisker asks. He says, how come Rambam doesn't bring the pasuk Zeh Keli V'Anveu? Why doesn't he bring the pasuk, this is my God and I will beautify him? The Gemara Masechet Sukkah says, his snow lefanov, make yourself beautiful before God. How does that work? He says, when you buy a lulav, you buy a nice lulav. You make a sukkah, make a nice sukkah. Mitzvahs should be nice. Do them nice. You wear a nice suit, a nice dress, wear a nice talus. That's what, do it nicely. How come he doesn't bring that pasuk? Why does Ram bring kol chelev? And you know what he answers? He says, because nice is nice, but not the best. Kol chelev means the best. The best. And the Rebbe asked the question, so what's the difference when it comes to mitzvahs? You do them nice, and here it says the best. And he says, very simple. Whose lulav and esrog is it? Whose talus is it? Whose candlesticks are they? They're yours. They're yours. You're doing a mitzvah with it, but they're yours. When you give it away to Hashem, whose is it? It's Hashem's. When they're yours, do what's nice. When it's God's, don't just make it nice, make it the best. So you should give the best, which means you should give things which are whole and complete. Well, if it's supposed to give things which are whole and complete, how come we couldn't give at least like a buck, a shekel? To give a half a shekel? A broken thing? We should have given a shekel. Or if you had to give this amount, because that's a shear, and the shear min Torah, so say Becca. Shekel HaKodesh, Becca. Everybody should give a Becca. What's a Becca? 10 Gera. How many Becca go into a shekel? 2 Becca. So what? It's a currency. Why did you have to emphasize Chmachatz is a shekel? And Moshe said, Chmachatz a shekel? I don't understand. God said, you see, a fiery half a shekel. Show him a fiery shekel. And very interesting, when Rashi comments in Parshas Chayesora, he doesn't say remez lechatzi shkolim. He says remez leshikle Yisrael. Remez for the shekels. We're going to talk about half shekels. What's the business with a half over here? Why truncate, give things in half? It seems to fly in the face of everything that we know about the concept of holiness. And it gets even worse. There's a special halacha when it comes to machzah shekel. It's not found by anything else. For every mitzvah, you can have a payment plan. There's one mitzvah you don't get to have a payment plan. You know what that is? Machzah shekel. When it comes to machzah shekel, you have to give the whole half. The whole half. At once. It has to be given. And you know what the reason for this halacha is? This is a halacha in the Rambam. The Rebbe says the reason is because it's like a korban. And you can't give a half a korban. I'll bring a half a goat today. I'll bring half a goat tomorrow. It doesn't work like that. A korban is a korban. And this is like a korban. You can't give half korbanos. And therefore, furthermore, how do we know it's a korban? Because it's a kapora. It's an atonement. It's a ransom. It's a ransom. It's an atonement. You got to give it all. So we find here this business that you have to give it all, which represents wholeness, completeness. I'm giving something to Hashem. So if I'm giving something to Hashem, and it has to be the whole half, well, why couldn't we just make it the whole? Do you know there's another halacha? You have to actually give a single piece. You couldn't give 10 gera. It had to be a single coin.
You couldn't give a shekel and take back a
No,
shekel?
no. And there's a very interesting Mishnah that says that people used to come to the money changer, something called a kolban.
Right,
You paid extra money for the change. You know, when you change your currency.
commission.
The dumbest thing you can do is change your money on the way in, change your money on the way out. You pay commission twice. So they paid commission. I don't understand. These two people go together. This is for us. Me and my buddy here. We're both given half a shekel. Sorry. You each have to give a half a shekel. You can't come and give me a shekel and say it's for two of us. What? It's me. It's a father and a son. It's two brothers. Nope. Everybody's got to bring his own whole half. It's like an oxymoron. Why does everybody have to bring his own whole half? Listen, if this is about broken pieces, then who cares how many pieces you bring? Let it be 5 geta, 10 geta, 20 geta. I don't care how many geta. And if it's about whole, well, if it's whole, then whole. This is the paradox. There's this paradox business about the half a shekel, which doesn't seem to make any sense to us. So, in order to understand the business of what this is really about, I need you to give me that book over there. I keep forgetting to take this book. No, not that one. The one behind it. Shekoyach. And the explanation is, says the Rebbe, listen to this. This is going to knock your socks off. This is wild stuff. I forgot you don't wear socks. Well, this is just mind-blowing because, like... I gotta find it. 1 second. Here we are. The Rebbe says the explanation begins in the Gemara in Yerushalmi, the Yerushalmi in Shkolim, which is also brought in the Tanchuma on our Parsha, that says that the atonement for this half shekel, as we mentioned earlier today, is the atonement of, not a little sin, not a detail, but the atonement of Chet HaEgel, abandonment of God, full-on abandonment. It's not a little sin. This is what we call the Chet, the sin of Avodah Zarah. This is what you would call Nituk V'hi Pardus Mehabayra, truncation. It's not a little thing. For lack of better terminology and to help you all understand, it's not like she asked him to take out the garbage and he forgot to take out the garbage. No, he was playing house with somebody else. That's not a detail. There's nobody home. The marriage doesn't begin. A Yid was supposed to get up in the morning and say Shema, and he hit the snooze button. They did not say Shema. He got up and he said something else. He went to worship another god. That's full-on truncation. Which is incidentally why people, even in today's day and age, have no issue with non-observance, not listening to Yiddishkeit, and so on and so forth. But the one thing they can't swallow is when somebody comes along and he says, I'm a Jew for J. That's where he gets stuck. Why? I mean, like, it could be some of these guys do more mitzvahs than the people who are not identifying as such. It's very simple. Because once you've exchanged the God of Israel for another God, you have left the building. You've left the building. A person violates Shabbos, unfortunate. A person not eating kosher food, it's unfortunate. A person who actively animates his neshama in a different direction, he's actively serving another God, there's nobody home. It's over. You have left the building of Judaism. So how do you undo this? How do you undo a sin like this? And you know what the answer is? The answer is a half a shekel. Why is the answer a half a shekel? Because the message of the half a shekel is that I have to realize that without God, I am simply incomplete. The message of the half shekel is that the Jew comes to the awareness and the realization that I'm not missing a detail if I'm disconnected from God. I'm not. We're only a half. Listen to this, if I can find it. I didn't come in with a... Here's the book. Where is it? No.
I blame the schools.
It's here somewhere. I'm looking for the... Here it is. This is a teaching for the Maggid of Mizrich. Not on this week's Torah portion. It's a teaching of the Maggid of Mizrach on Parshas Ba'alotcha, and it speaks about the trumpets that Moshe Rabbeinu had to make. By the way, those are very special trumpets, hammered out of silver. Moshe Rabbeinu used it. They were never used by anybody else. In fact, they had to be squirreled away before Moshe's passing, so nobody else never get their hands on it. Because these trumpets represented something magical and mystical. What? Nobody really knows. But the Maggid of Mizrach says, I'll tell you what. It says, Aseh lecha shtei chatzotzros. He says the word chatzotzros means, this is chatzitzura. Make for yourself a half an image. And he says like this. The first part of this is very mystical, and it'll take me about an hour to teach properly, so I'm not even going to try, because we have a limited amount of time here. But he says basically that the Adam on his own is only dam. Dam. It's all you are. It's a collection of plasma, blood. It's nothing there. A corpse, it's nothing. In the language of Kabbalah, it means dibur and malchus. Okay, fine. I'm not going to. But that's what dam stands for. Dibur and malchus, plasma. Just a sack of plasma. But in order for it to be an adam, what do you need to have? You need to have an aleph. What does the aleph represent? Alufa Shalom, the master of the universe. That's the neshama. So a person will say, I'm missing a foot. That's sad. Missing a hand, sad. Missing an eye, nebuch. Missing a neshama. What does that mean? That you're dead. Missing a neshama doesn't mean I'm missing a detail. I'm not missing a part of my body. If your body and the soul separate, it's over. We have nothing. You can live without a limb. You can live without a faculty. You can't live without a life. You can't live without a neshama. So there's this business of the person being just dam. He needs the aleph in order to be an adam. And God says, as if, because God's the adam shalakise, God says, I'm incomplete without you. As if. God makes himself as if he's incomplete without us. God says, I need you. I need you to be my better half, so to speak. I need you to be my half. We're in this together. God says that without you, it's not a tzura shlema. He says only when we're together, we have two halves that comprise a single whole. So when we're separate, we aren't. A half isn't. I have half a cup. You have some coffee. I have half a cup for you. That's ridiculous. I need a cup. A cup is made up of two sides. So he says, only when it's yachad, then it becomes a tzura shlema. And he says kesef, the word kesef, which means silver, comes also from the word taiva, which means yearning or desire. And he says the word kesef should mean that we have a desire, we're misave, we have a yearning and a desire, a craving for closeness to God. That's what it means. That we want God to love us. And God wants to love us too. And he says, he metaphorizes, the Maggid says, it's like parents and the children, that each one says, I'm incomplete without you. Without children, the parents are not parents. And without the parents, the children says, like, we're not a family. It could be an individual, it can't be a family. We need each other. Kol echad ba'atzmai eini b'shleimus. Each one on his own isn't. He's a half. So all you get is chatzitzura, half an image. Half an image is not a broken, a missing, an inept detail. It's nothing. If you only have half, you don't have anything. You need to have the two halves come together. And the Maggid says that's the idea of the chatzotzes. That's what these trumpets represented. So the Rebbe builds on this Maggid of Mizrach idea, and he says, this was the business of the chatzi shekel. The chatzi shekel was a very real, actual expression of a yid being brought to an understanding that he's a half. That he's a half. Hashem gave you 10 soul faculties. You have 10 geira. God, so to speak, provides the other 10 soul faculties. In order for you to get a shekel, you need to be you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu together. That's the only thing that can atone for a sin of Chet HaEgel. Because the sin of Chet HaEgel, the Jewish people had to come to this awareness. They weren't missing a detail. It wasn't that something was out of sorts with the relationship. Everything was wrong. And when they gave a half a shekel, but not just go through the motions, a fiery half a shekel. What's the fire? The fire of half a shekel. The Rebbe says the fire of half a shekel is the fire, the fervor that I am incomplete without God. That a life without God is not a life. Do you know how many people during the Holocaust had the opportunity to send their children to a convent and didn't? Because they said, What will be the point if my child lives physically but doesn't know that he's Jewish? What will be the point? Well, that he's alive, flesh and blood? He doesn't know that he's a Jew.
Is that the right thing to do?
I don't know. I can't tell you what's the right thing to do. I cannot tell you. There's none of us can judge those people, and none of us know what's the right thing to do. I can tell you this. I understand it. I understand it. You know what Mesiras Nefesh means? When a Yid's given a choice. He said, either you live a life with no Yiddishkeit, or don't live a life. And a Jew says, I can't live without God. That's not an option for me. To live with no Yiddishkeit, it's not an option. Either I'm a Yid, or I'm not a Yid. It's not an option. That's what the half a shekel means. The half a shekel is an actual demonstration that a Yid says, without God, I'm not missing a detail. It's not life. That's the atonement. And Moshe Rabbeinu was shown that it's not going to be a half a shekel. It's not going to be just an act of giving something. The act of giving something is supposed to inculcate within the giver a message. And God says, there's a fire. Here's the fire. Here's the fervor. Here's the desire to be close to Hashem. What this really represents is that a Yid will understand through giving this half a shekel that life without God simply isn't life. So now we have an understanding of why this is a half a shekel, why there had to be a fire. All this starts now it's starting to come together. Now it's starting to really make sense to us. And here I come to an amazing little detail about this of how deep this goes. And I never knew this. This is stuff I only discovered today. And I'm going to begin with Ibn Ezra. The Ibn Ezra in his commentary on Parshas Pekudei, where it says Becca, I'm going to read this. Let me read this to you. He says Chatzi shekel. What's a Becca? A Becca is a Chatzi shekel. In other words, you can't be a Becca. Becca was the name of the currency, but if you gave a Becca, you missed the point. You had to give a Chatzi shekel. He says Vitame. Why was it called a Becca? Listen to this. Why was a Becca called a Becca? He says Vitame kasher yivuka hashekel. When you cracked the shekel, hine chetzye. When you broke the shekel. Broke the shekel. Now, I understand you could say, can you break $1 for me? Could you give me change? But he seems to speak about breaking a shekel. And now, I'm going to prove to you that he's literally talking about giving in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu and at the time of the first Beis HaMikdash, literally half a coin. Literally. But you have half a coin. Half $1 is actually worthless in this country. But if you have two $half, you can tape them together and you can get yourself a new $1. A half $1 is worthless. A physical half $1. But if you take $100 a half and you have somebody else has the other half, you have $100. Ramban says, with regard to the business of the coinage, like you asked about, so what's this coinage business? Was it even coins before? So Ramban says in his commentary on our parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu struck a new currency. He was a big king, a massive nation. He created a currency. This was the first Israelite Jewish currency. We became a nation, and within a year of becoming a nation, we had our own currency. And the currency was called Shekel HaKodesh. And you know why it was called Shekel HaKodesh? Because we did holy things with it. Because in the beginning, we never went shopping. What should we go shopping for? What do people go shopping for? They go shopping for food. We didn't go shopping for food. It was raining down from the heavens. What else did they go shopping for? Clothing. The clothing grew with us. So what did we go shopping for? What did we spend money on? We spent money on mitzvahs. There was nothing else to spend money on. It was a shekel HaKodesh. They had currency. And he says, V'kara l'matbe'ahu shekel. He called it a shekel. Ba'avor shekol matbe'a b'mishkol shalom, because every coin had a full weight. It had a full weight. Whatever that weight was, it was a weight, and they struck the currency by virtue of a weight. Ein boy pchas. There was no kesef sigid. There had no deficiency. There was no alloy. It was unalloyed. It was pure silver. Original Torah currency, pure silver. Rambam talks about this, and he says the silver was measured in antiquity in barley corns, because barley corns don't reproduce sexually. They don't come at different barley corns. Barley corns are barley corns. They just keep reproducing. They're always the same size anywhere in the world. So it's an easy way to measure money, barley corns. You're like 380 barley corns as an ounce, or something like that. So he says, Ubavur shemishkele ha'arochin. that whenever you had to have something which was dedicated to the Beis HaMikdash and had to be ransomed or exchanged for cash, for money, or pidyon habachar, or exchanging the firstborn, it was mimatbeya. They used a coin. Shehem kodesh. Those coins were holy coins. And he says, that's basically the only currency they had. Ramban says that's the currency. And that's why it's called Shekel HaKodesh. And he says, towards the end of his commentary, he says you should know that the shkolim of the Torah were 4 dinars. 4 dinars went into 1 shekel. And he says that the shekel that's talked about in the Mishnah is a different shekel. The shekel talked about in the Mishnah is 2 dinars. And you know why that is? He says because they produced a different form of currency during the second Beit HaMikdash, which was half of the currency of the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. And that half currency of the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, that's what they would give as a half shekel. But that currency, Ramban says, only came about during the Second Temple. So what was the original Jewish currency? The Jewish country had a currency. What was the currency? The original currency was shekels. Now, if the original currency was shekels, how'd you give a half a shekel? You had to cut a shekel in half. Literally, came with half a shekel. You understand this idea of half a shekel was once literal. And if you're not sure that I'm right about what the Ramban and Ibn Ezra is saying, let me read to you from the Abarbanel. He says, clearly, Lo hoya beinehem kesef achar, says Abarbanel. They did not have any other form of coinage or currency. Ela hamatbeya shahoya shekel echad. That's all they got. You got shekels. And he says, Tziva sheyitnu machtzisai. Hashem gave a command. He said, give half of it. Ulefi shahoyu mevakim oiseh, because they had to crack it, literally. They had to break it in half. That's why it says, Becca la gilgoilas. They had to physically break the shekels. Becca, it was a cracked, a piece. Hu chatzi shekel sheyikvu v'yechatchu b'shnayim. Barbanel says they cut the coin in half. So when you're talking about a Jew giving a coin, and it was a fiery coin, Moshe Rabbeinu was shown a half of a coin. The fervor was the half. That a Yid had a yearning for Hashem to the point that he or she realized that you're but a half without God. God is not a pastime, something, a cherry on the top in your life. That is life. Yes, you can't live without a body and physicality. You can't live without a neshama. For a Yid, the two go inseparable. I can't live without food. I can't live without shelter. I can't live without clothes, right? I can't live without Yiddishkeit. That was the message of the shekel. The Chizkuni, incidentally, comes a little after Rashi. He says, Becca la Gilgolos, why in Parshas Pekudei? And by the way, ask yourself the question, why does the word Becca only show up in Parshas Pekudei? Why doesn't Becca show up in Parshas Kisisa? We know Becca shows up in the beginning with Rivka because it's a weight. But why does the half coin only get called a Becca in Parshas Pekudei when they're actually giving it? If God made the commandment to give it in Parshas Kisisa, why didn't he say Becca then? So the Chizkuni in Parshas Pekudei says, Becca la Gilgolos is the machzes HaShekel. Kisheyivuka HaShekel, when the shekel was broken, was split. Harehu lachtzoyin, and it was a half a shekel. Do you understand what's going on here? The Jewish people literally had to divide a coin. When they cut that coin in half, there wasn't even a coin anymore. What was the message to them? The message was, separating from Hashem is like cutting yourself in half. You aren't anymore. It's not an option.
That's why they don't exist today, isn't it?
That's why there are no half shekels in the first Beis HaMikdash. When are there half shekels? Only from the second Beis HaMikdash. Only when there was a new currency that was reconstituted in the time of Ezra. That's when they struck a new coin. That's when the currency changed. But in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, and it seems the time of the first Beis HaMikdash, and we have no shekels from that time. They were physically half shekels. Physically. And then they were melted together and reconstituted. But they were literally, when you take a coin and cut it in half, that's a very profound message. You know one of the reasons we break a plate or an engagement? To demonstrate that just that the plate is broken and it can't be put together, we're getting married. It's not an option. This is irrevocable. Can't put a plate back together, you can't separate us. That's one of the messages. It's like an irrevocable thing. You cut a coin in half. was the most powerful symbolism. That's the fire that God showed Moshe Rabbeinu. And it gets even more interesting. The Baal HaAkedah, Rabbeinu Yitzchak Arama says, he says that Shaha'adam b'chlaloi hu demoyin HaShekel. The Baal HaAkedah says a person is the image of a shekel. The shekel represented like the person. And because mitzad mispari hanizkar, because of the number that's given, nechlak l'shtayim, he has to divide himself in half. And what does that mean? Machatzise ha'echad kodesh la'Hashem, u'machatzise ha'sheni yomad chai. That a Yid has to realize that his Yiddishkeit life, his holy life, is half of his life. Yiddishkeit is not a popular pastime and a hobby. It's not something else. If it works out, if I have time, then I'll do some Jewish stuff too. That's not the Torah perspective. The Torah perspective is that my Judaism is as important as everything else. 50-50. I need to eat physically, I need to put on my tefillin today. I need a roof over my head, I need to have Shabbos. I need to eat kosher. It goes hand in hand. If you rob a Yid of his Yiddishkeit, it's like you killed him. It's a full 50% of life. If a Yid can fix, so to speak, his material side, and he can take his material side and marry it to his spiritual side, then you have, that's what Machzah Shekel is really about. Then you have a whole life. A whole life is when a person has his material and physical, biological needs looked after, and at the same time, his spiritual and soul needs looked after. That's putting your shekel together. And the Baal HaAkedah says in Parshas Kisisa that the message here was that a Yid had to know that everything together is 20 Gera, and this represents the 10 soul powers of each part of the neshama. And the bottom line is, you couldn't have one without the other. That's the deeper message of the Machzah Shekel. Now, even in the second Beis HaMikdash, gets very interesting. Even in the second Beis HaMikdash, where they had their own kind of coinage, still there was an emphasis on a half. And I'll get to you in a minute. I just want to share the Oitzer Place Torah suggests that there are certain communities where they have special yotzros. Yotzros are a special prayer that reflects the theme of the day. Where we all say yotzer is on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. In the middle of the belly of the Shemoneh Esrei, it's added, it's called a yotzer. Who is the most prolific paitan? Who is the most prolific liturgical author? Is Rabbi Eliezer HaKaler. Who is Rabbi Eliezer HaKaler? Many, many different opinions. Some say it was Rabbi Eliezer ben Aruch. The Arizal says it was Rabbi Eliezer ben Reb Shimon Yochai's son. Some say he was living in the times of Gaonim. We don't know who he was. Some say it's called Kaler because he ate a cookie that had a holy name and that opened his mind up. But at any rate, he is the most respected paitan. Most of our Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur prayers in Sfard and Ashkenaz come from Rabbi Eliezer HaKaler. So Rabbi Eliezer HaKaler wrote the Yotzer also for the special Shabbatot. And there's a special Yotzer, which is recited in certain communities, on Parshas Shkolim, which we'll talk about next week. And over there, he says, this is the verbiage, Or panecha aleinu adoi nasa. The light of your countenance, you have carried us. V'shekel esa, I raise up my shekel, b'bayis nachin in the right home, v'nasa, and you accepted it. So why does he say shekel? If the mitzvah is chatzi shekel, he should say chatzi shekel. So the Oitzer Plois HaTorah suggests that Rabbi Eliezer HaKaler knew and understood that the original shekel was I had to take a shekel and break it. And I took the shekel and broke it. That was the message. So what's interesting is that when Rashi talks about the concept of this half shekel in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, he says it was a chatzi unkia. Chatzi unkia, it's a measure of silver, but a half. Ramban disputed Rashi, and he said it's 3/4 of an unkia. There's this big argument. However, at a certain point, Ramban was chased out of Spain, where he lived in Grenada, and he had to go to the land of Israel. Famous story, he has this James of Aragon forces him into a debate with Pablo Cristiani. The Rambam wipes the floor with him, but the church is upset, and they said, the Rambam can't live here anymore. Rambam goes to Eretz Yisrael, and he leads a modern aliyah to Israel. And amazing things happen. He writes letters back to his son, who lives still in Grenada. And one of the letters he says that when I came to Israel, he came to Akko. That's where he landed. That's where his boat landed. And he said, I met elders there that had silver coins. Now, I've seen these silver coins. Many of you have seen these silver coins, and I never knew what the signs on the silver coins was. He says the silver coins, I always knew it was a chalice. I thought it had something to do with the Korban Omer. But Ramban says that was a representation of the manna, which was in the size of an Omer. He said on the other side, it's like a flower. He said that's the blossom of Aaron's staff. Why do we have those pictures? Because in the second Beis HaMikdash, the ark was hidden. You couldn't do a depiction of Keruvim. That's like idolatry. The Keruvim were only allowed to be Keruvim. But what was hidden with the ark? A jug of manna and the staff of Aaron. Jewish people didn't put faces on their coinage. So what were they going to put on their coins in the second Beis HaMikdash? What they were missing. It's like a postcard. It's like a picture. So they would keep the memory of these things alive. Ramban says, I saw the silver coin and I weighed it. And it said, he says, I couldn't read the writing. He says there was an old kuti, like one of these renegade Jews who had stuck with the scripture. They could still read that old writing. And he said, he told us what it says. It says, Shekel Yisrael. And Ramban says, I weighed the shekel, and guess what? Rashi was right. It weighed chatzi unkia. It's a half an unkia. So even in the time of the second Beis HaMikdash, the unkia was, I suppose, the standard was a chatzi unkia. And you had to get that coin. And that's what the Mishnah talks about the kolban. You had to not physically crack the coin, but you had to break the coin. Probably by the time the second Beis HaMikdash, currency was changed. Currency, you couldn't do currency. Currency was you couldn't just break coins anymore. It was probably smaller currency. There's probably a number of reasons why things changed. But whatever they used to do, they couldn't do anymore. So they created this currency, but the emphasis of the currency was still the concept of the half shekel. And this, my dear friends, is the secret of the half a shekel. That's what the half a shekel meant and continues to mean to us in our day and age. And that's why it's the ransom of the soul. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu's question was. And when he saw the fiery yearning, the half shekel yearning, the fiery awareness that me and God were inseparable, this was Kaifer Nafshi. That answered all questions, and this explains everything we talked about tonight. I think in the most beautiful of ways. It brings all the pieces together. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help us, that we should merit to live lives in which we feel like a half a shekel. We know we're a half a shekel. We live a life complete with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we should be able to actually give a half a shekel, Eretz Hashem, in the third Beis HaMikdash, B'mheira, will be Ameinu, Amen.
Amen.